My name is Chris Burandt, and snowmobiling is my passion. This wide-open podcast is here to share stories, tips, and tactics to make you a more successful backcountry rider. All right, guys, what's up? We are going to roll right into this because 10 minutes of BSing at the front left us 10 minutes in the hole at the end here. So,
Paul, it's good BSing. Like it's necessary.
It is. So, Paul, we're going to roll into part two. We cut part one yesterday, because we didn't even get like halfway through our life story. And B, we got to go ride with some awesome veterans who were like literally standing outside waiting for us to quit gabbing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but yeah.
Dude.
I mean, there is some sacrifice. Like they get to come ride out here and have a rad time. They could wait for 10 minutes.
God, did we have a good day yesterday or what?
Oh man, it was a great day. Like Mother Nature.
I mean, look at it outside today.
Now it's snowing and blowing and nasty and crappy viz. Yesterday was bluebird, and we found really good snow, especially considering the season you guys have had. It was solid. We had a great day.
Yeah.
My arms were noodle. I wanted to go with you guys in the end, and I'm like, nah, dude, I got to try and figure out how to traverse my way out of here because it was a little sketch for a guy that can't stand
it. Was. Well, it's so funny was as we're coming out, there's this one little section on the trail, like you don't want to turn left. And I stop in the middle of it. Corey's behind me, and he's like all nervous like that I stopped, and I pointed down, and he looks down because there's a sled down there. Some group ended up
still down there
wadding a sled down there, and I'm like, don't go down there. He's like, okay. But no, it was another magical 2 days. Super appreciative of you including us in this program and bringing veterans out here. And yesterday my favorite line of the day from somebody was that, boy, these mountains sure can heal. And
true story.
They sure can. Yeah. I mean, dude, I wake up every day and I go ride, and I still, like, every time I get up there, I'm like, dude, this is unreal.
It's funny when you talk about, a plan and paths and, the stuff we discuss at these rides every time. And you started BBA like 2 years before I started the foundation. So when you started, I was like, it was kind of a no-brainer. I'm like, it's a marriage made in heaven.
Yeah.
Like it just, and 12 years now, 13 years, whatever we've been doing it. How long have you been doing BBA?
Well, since 2008. Yeah.
Okay. So that's, when did BBA really take off?
Yeah, exactly. And it was probably,
because you were here
in 12.
In 12. So that's about,
Exactly.
When you came
exactly.
here,
And, it's funny, you were giving me some shit about 2008 X Games not going so well, and it didn't. For me. So I win X Games in 2007. And like we were talking about in episode 1, if you guys haven't checked it out, this is episode 2. Episode 1 has a bunch of cool stuff. So that 2005 through 7 time frame for you and I were as good as it got.
Yeah.
Right? So
huge.
But in 2008, so here's what happens, right? I take the money from the Vin Diesel movie. I take the money from X Games and go freaking all in. Build a house, starting a family, right, in 2009. So thinking about having a kid, starting a business, and so it went from all the confidence of the world that I can do anything to dude, if I get hurt, I am screwed.
For sure.
And as we all know, if you ride hesitant or
you can't do it.
You can't.
You just can't.
You can't. So I show up to X Games, A, not wanting to be there, B, being on a brand new snowmobile that I absolutely effing hate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It was a new chassis.
For sure.
And I hated it, and I wasn't comfortable. I didn't practice any because I was so busy with work. And everyone is expecting the defending gold medalist to be, and I didn't want to be there so bad, and I was so happy that I didn't make it to the final round. And everyone screwed up, and all I had to do was I didn't even have to flip. I had to just have a clean run, and literally I straight aired one jump, and it was the biggest oh, thank God, I can go home.
Yeah,
it's funny how mind change.
I kind of remember thinking about that or watching you at that time and been like, that guy's moving on.
Yeah.
Just you were like, this is not what I want to do anymore. I did it, and I'm going out on top, and I would rather be like my passion is moved to something else.
Yeah. So okay, we're gonna go quick.
So much for not BSing for 10 minutes.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so quick recap. We talked about kind of those early years, sled necks, long distance jumps, X Games, all of that stuff. So
my able-bodied years.
Your able-bodied years. Before we get to the accident, I got one other thing while you were able-bodied that you and I got to do that in my mind is one of my top 5 things I've got to do in my life. And this was in conjunction and a big thanks to Monster at the time. So, I win X Games. You're this dude who just flies snowmobiles over football fields, and we get the invite to go race the Baja 1000 with a bunch of other somewhat known athletes.
Fairly well known.
Jeremy McGrath, Ken Block, Ryan Capes, Kyle Loza, right? So
Jake Brown,
right?
Jake
Brown,
Brown.
So that's, it was the athlete team versus the executive team at Monster, and we got to go race the freaking Baja 1000.
It was it their 20th or 25th anniversary? So those that don't know Baja, usually it starts in Ensenada.
Yep.
And they do a loop. On the anniversary, they do
rip to the tip.
They go all the way from Ensenada to
Cabo. Yeah. So it was longer, it was 1,200 miles.
1,200 miles.
If it would have been 1,000, we would have been in better shape. But. And we won't spend a ton of time on this, but, you and I were – it's funny, like, they didn't have this great plan, right? They didn't know for who they were assigning to go drive with other people, right? Like, in my head, I'm like, dude, it'd be pretty cool to go, like, with Ken Block, right?
Or McGrath. Like, he's a pretty fun dude.
I mean, all these guys you couldn't pick a bad dude, right? And then so it kind of – but you could kind of tell, like, we were the snowmobilers.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Like, these guys don't know what the hell they're doing. No one really wanted to ride with us. So we ended up getting paired together, which in the end ended up being really cool.
It was awesome.
And again, more time that you and I got to spend together and everything. But the short of it was this. So, we're the last leg. So we get the car, and the car is pretty much in shambles.
It's hammered.
Yeah. We had all the.
It had been like A-arms ripped off. It had been rolled several times. It was in pretty rough shape.
We get the car, and out of our class, I think there was 15 cars in our class.
17, 15, something like that.
And we were in 12, 13, 14. I don't know. We were at the bottom of the barrel when we got the car, but the old snowmobilers had
we were fast.
We had a different mindset, and the mindset was we're gonna go freaking haul butt and do what we do, right? Here's what we know. I have so many cool like memories about this, but one of my favorite ones was so Paul and I, again dealing with some adversity on this. We get in the car, and they're at the checkpoint. They're buckling us in, getting our headsets on and helmets and blah blah blah, and I can't remember. Did we have communication there?
When I drove,
because I drove first, and then
first, we had communication for a little while.
And
we were
lost
really
it.
fast when we had communications. And then at first you could hear me talk, but I couldn't hear you talk back. And then it totally went away.
Then we lost it.
We totally lost. So we've got this GPS.
Yep.
And I'm navigating. Chris is driving, and I'm like doing hand signs and tapping him to slow down or go faster or right's coming up. It was wild. And we were still crazy
fast.
We were doing 80, 90 miles an hour in these, dust bowls, can't see 10 feet in front of you, and driving by hand signals.
So again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but two of my I have three points I want to make here of my favorite things about racing that leg. So like Paul said, I could talk to him, but he couldn't talk back. And all I remember is there was this straight section that was for like miles and miles and miles. And it was all whipped out. And as a snowmobiler, here's what we know, right? Like our suspension sucks, but on those older sleds, the way we could handle bumps like that is you just go fast and you get up on top, right?
Skip them,
And skip them. So I remember this, 20 or 30 mile long section against this barbed wire fence, and it's just like, cars are literally just going like this because it's so violent, and we are up on the top doing 80, right? And so and I'm just like, there would be these times, and I could glance at the screen a little bit, but, it was me like, Paul, are you sure it's still straight? And he's like, yes, like just the hand signal straight or this and this. And so my favorite point about that is after the race, we're at the awards banquet and everything and run into Tanner Faust. Tanner's fairly decent behind the wheel as well. And this was my favorite part was Tanner, he's like, oh, hey, what's up? I said, yeah, because he was a rock star, so rock star versus monster, right? And he's like, yeah, so what segment did you guys run? And he's like, oh, man, we were that last 400 or whatever.
400 or 500 miles, something like that.
We were that last 400. He's like, oh, yeah, me too. He's like, man, do you remember that one 30-mile straight section where you just had to roll everything? And I'm just like thinking to myself, I'm like, yeah,
no.
that was brutal. And, so like, was I supposed to be rolling it? Because, I mean, that's
we were not rolling it. We didn't roll anything.
No.
No.
So that was a really cool one. I don't even know what number 2 was, but so my other memory of that is, so we get to the checkpoint, and this is where we're going to change drivers. And, we were going at a great pace. Everything was working really well.
Moving up through the ranks.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I know what number 2 is. You talked about the dust, and it's called, dust
Silt
or
beds,
silt
yeah.
and all this stuff. But probably one of the gnarliest things you'll ever do is, we're clipping along, and this is, you start to see the dust in front of you, and you're like, here we go. So the only way to, you can't just set back and just mosey, you're faster than that person. You're obviously catching them. So there's this moment where you have to get in the cloud. You cannot see anything. An effing thing.
I mean, it's like if you drove into the ocean, the water, just a wall of water on you, except it's silt.
Yeah.
I mean, it's black. Yeah, it was wild. That was wild.
And so there's this 15 to 20 second moment where you're just wide open. You can't see a thing, and all you're trying to do is get to the back of the car to freaking hit them, to tell them to get the hell out of the way. And that was pretty cool, pretty intimidating. So that was number 2. Number 3, we get to the pit stop, and we look at each other, and I'm like, dude, you want to drive? And you're like, man, I don't know, we're at a good pace, and I was like, you got to drive. And so we switch. Literally, very first corner, Paul goes in, blows the corner, takes out a 6-foot cactus. It tumbles right into my lap. It's sitting in my lap. And Paul's like, oh, dude, sorry, bro. And he's trying to I'm like, get your hand, just get on the road. And I'm picking this cactus up and throwing it. And then
I've recovered after that.
And then you settled in. Yeah. And then we went from, 12th or whatever we were in all the way up to 3rd. Ended up having some stupid thing break on the car at the very end, and we're pushing. And
we pushed the car across the finish line, which is a pretty rad memory. I mean, the entire, country of Mexico sounded like they were cheering for us as we're on the wheels, pushing it up the hill to the finish line.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. So anyway, Baja.
Yeah, great memories.
Baja was cool. Okay, so now let's get into life. So we did that in 07, 08 X Games. So get us up to speed of basically we're at our buddy Justin Hoyer's place. Well, you were getting ready to go.
Yeah, so I was, that was probably 2010 was probably not 2009, 2010 was probably the most successful, especially financially, years that I ever had. It still will probably ever have. I was pretty rad. All you had to do was ask me. I was pretty cool dude. So, I had pretty large medal aspirations for 2011 X Games. I was improving enough to where I was on the fringe of the podium. I was, starting to get stuff figured out. I was really proficient at backflipping and wanted to learn, more upside down stuff. And I felt pretty confident that with a little time, I'd be right there with the, the valleys and the Bodines. And so
real quick, I remember after that, so I'm out, right? I'm not. I think I did freestyle, like doing shows and demos up until 2009 probably, but I recall that confidence that you're talking about, like going to, whatever show where
Invasion Tour.
Invasion Tour, yeah. And I'm going there, and I've regressed quite a bit now. I'm on this new chassis sled again, still not comfortable. I'm doing my other gig, but to go make $5,000 to go do some seat grabs, whatever. But sure. I'm there watching you just like be the man, which was awesome. And it really, made me think of like, I've had my time. I am moving on, but it's cool to see people continuing to take the torch.
Yeah, so I talked to Hoyer, and we had a game plan because
for 2011 X
Games. 2011 X Games, he really wanted to. He'd kind of had a couple down years, and he really wanted to come out swinging and get back on the box as well. So I went down to Wisconsin in November of 2010, Ellsworth, Wisconsin, where Hoyer had a compound, a couple jumps at a foam pit, and that was the plan. I was just going to hone my skills and learn some new tricks. And I actually bought a 40-foot diesel pusher, and that was going to, what we were going to live in touring around the country. And I'd actually looked at some property, like in Prescott, Wisconsin, not too far from Hoyer's, not too far from the Minneapolis airport. Was like, I'm going to spend some time here. Mm-hmm. And, we were at Hoyer's on I think it was I don't know. I honestly don't. I used to celebrate the date. I don't anymore. I'd get super wasted on the paralyzed date. Now it doesn't matter to me at all. So, it was like the 19th or the 20th of November, something like that. And we were just, it was Hoyer, myself. I feel like there was somebody else there jumping with us. Anyway, there was a few people watching. Josh Hoopert, my right hand at the time, he was there. And we were just doing, it was like warm-up stuff, like hitting the ramp. I mean, we'd been there a week, so it was like, you just go rap, hit the jump, do a few, start doing tricks. And I was doing seat grabs, and I was working on one-handed seat grabs, and I came back to the bars, and for the first time ever, I had gone to some high-rise bars instead of, because I always use race bars, and they were flat. And I was getting pretty used to him, wasn't completely used to him. Anyway, I went back on the landing. I got a little loose on the trick, but not really anything crazy. And I went back to the bars, and my left hand slipped off the bars, and I landed, and I just folded over that bar pad. And it took me right here in the solar plexus, and it pushed my T5 out backwards and dislocated, bruised my spinal cord. And I just remember, like it happened yesterday, I landed, and I'm like, oh, holy shit, I can't breathe. And I just rolled off the side of the sled, and instantly you just knew something was wrong. I'm like, okay, can't feel my legs. This is not good. And the folks that were watching didn't even, had no idea anything happened. Mm-hmm. So eventually Hoyer and Josh came over, and I think it was Hoyer. He's like, bro, what are you doing? And I'm like, I can't feel my legs. And Josh is like, yeah, that's not funny. And I'm like, it ain't funny. And then everybody knew, so then 911, life flights headed this way. And they took me to the hospital in St. Paul. And kind of just started putting me back together. And even at that, it's weird. And I think about that day, and I always have the same mindset. I'm like, okay, we've been through shit before. Mm-hmm. Let's get me to the hospital so you can put me back together.
Fix me up.
But there was a little bit of a nagging, okay, this might be a little more than just putting me back together. And from that very first instances and first few minutes, I was like, okay, if this is what's going on, it was like the wheels already started turning, what's next, which is a bizarre thing to say. But yeah.
I mean,
it was like you
just took my list of questions, right? You're already going. So that was like, I mean,
it was so.
I mean, as you're laying there, can't feel your legs.
It was just like my whole life. It's always I've tried to be a problem solver. Like you put a problem in front of me, and I'm gonna do my best to figure out how to solve it. It doesn't matter what it is. And it was like that just kicked in instantly. Like, okay, how are you going to solve this if this is
the problem?
Yeah. I mean, I remember even like as the pain meds kicked in, as I'm in the helicopter, I'm like, oh, am I still going to be able to ride after this? Like, how are we going to figure it out? And then I'm, kind of in la land. But even in the hospital, it was just, I can honestly say I never really had a like crazy dark moments. And a lot of that I attest to having a really great support group, really great family, great friends, people that were like, whatever you need, we're here for you. The one thing that sucked was to go from, top of the game, making a pile of money to basically nothing in a flash. Mm-hmm. Like I was making like 40 grand after that point. It was, so there was some transition there. Like, but yeah, I mean, I did a couple weeks of rehab in St. Paul, and then they're basically like, okay, good luck. And I was like, oh, wait, really? Like, that's it? So I actually reached out and got in contact with Craig Hospital in Denver, and they accepted me to come in, and I was supposed to go to Denver for 6 months. Mm-hmm. And basically they, incredible rehab center, like that. It's like boot camp for spinal cord injuries. Mm-hmm. Like you're up in the morning, you're in the gym, you're in wheelchair class, you're exercising, you're like, this is how you do it. You're in, OT in the kitchen learning how to cook and all this.
You're like, okay,
shit.
this is
life
this
stuff.
is good. Yeah.
And yeah, they had to turn me loose like 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks into because I was, breaking all the records on the wheelchair classes, and I was actually helping teach the classes, and they're like, Paul, you can't stay. Like,
we need other people in here that need the service.
We can't bill your insurance if you're helping teach the classes. Like, so I actually went from Craig directly to X Games.
So that's okay. You went through that very quickly, and I'm going to bring it back.
Okay.
So crazy, it just nonchalantly. Yeah, I was just doing this seat grab, my hand slipped off, chest into the bars, and all of a sudden I can't feel my legs. So Hoyer calls me, I think the day after, and gives me the news. And he's like, Paul had an accident and it's not good.
Oh shit.
And I'm like, what do you mean? What happened? And, I'm thinking like, working on
broken arm or
well, I'm thinking from an injury side, but I'm also thinking like, was he doing a double flip? Did he miss the pit? Like, I know the setup over there. Like, what? And he's like, dude, he was doing a seat grab. I'm like a backflip seat grab? No, a seat grab, right? Like, and so the competitor in me, and I'm sure you've thought about this too. Like, dude, I've been hitting ramps at 92 miles an hour jumping football fields, and
dude. I'm the first. I tell this when I tell this story. I'm like, I wish I could tell you I had some crazy gnarly crash, because I've had a lot of them.
Yeah.
That I fully walked away, and it's funny because I feel like you're in our industries, you're given a finite amount of crashes that you are going to walk away from, and it's kind of like that cats have 9 lives things. Like freestyle athletes have a few lives.
Yep.
And once you run out of them, it's your time, man.
Yeah.
And I feel like I had some really gnarly ones that I probably shouldn't have walked away from that I did, and unfortunately, it was just a little silly one that,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I can go a bunch of different ways from here, and so this will be a little bit scattered, but so like you said, you went from making bank, traveling the world, just like all the hard work was you're living it, right? And now literally it's taking the eraser from the board and like literally starting over.
Yeah. And it so I was pretty determined that nothing was going to change. I'm going to live my life and do all the same things exactly the same way from this point forward, and I'm going to just prove that I can do it. And that would be, if I was going to give someone that was freshly in situation like mine, that is not the advice I would give them. It has taken me a long time. Well, it did. I'm much better now, but it did. Like, I refused help, and it's not an uncommon thing. Like, it's pretty par for the course, I think.
Especially
mindset
like
for sure.
Ours,
I love to fish. That's no secret.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do all that stuff the same level, and I couldn't. I had to have help. Even riding sleds took a while, knowing that I couldn't just throw my shit in the truck and go to the backcountry. I couldn't do that anymore. I had to have someone to help me.
Yep.
And to be able to, to kind of put your pride away and be able to ask for help, that would be my number one piece of advice. Do not be afraid to ask for help.
Do you think that was, like, what was the hardest thing? If you could pinpoint one.
That was probably it. Like, coming to the harsh realization that you're just not going to be able to do everything the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you have the right mindset, I do a lot of the things that I did, I just don't do them exactly the same way.
Yeah.
And you could still do it, you just can't do it the same way.
Yeah.
And that took a while. That took a while for me. And granted, I would get considerably more frustrated than I do nowadays. And anybody that knows me knows I don't really complain about anything ever. And when I do, it's like 30 seconds of screaming F-bombs, and then I'm over it.
Yeah.
And there was more of that in the beginning. Like, I would get frustrated, and only because I was not willing to massage the way that I did things. Like, I wanted to do everything exactly the same way because that's who I was, and it just wasn't the case. Like, I'm still the same person. I still have the same mindset. I still think the same way, and mostly I still do the same shit.
Yeah.
But I have to do it differently, and that took a little while. So that would be the not being afraid to ask for help was a big one, and it took me a long time. In fact, when I met my wife, that was my parents, my mom especially. She was like, "Oh, this is for real," because Paul's not afraid to let her, for him, for her to help.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, when it first happened, Paul, and getting to see you, so it's cool. Like, you go to X Games, right? Like, X Games, you're in a wheel
on a sled, ripping around.
I know.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome, right? But I'm announcing for ESPN at this time and seeing you around, and I'll be honest, what was really tough for me, because again, you and I have very similar mindsets, is I was scared. Like, of little things, and these are all like perspective and pity and selfish, but like, do I kneel down to talk to him because he can't stand up, right? Do I do that? Can I help him? Does he? And like, when you're getting out of the car into your chair, like, I want to help, but like, I know I would say, get the fuck away from me. Yeah. I can do this.
No, that's exactly right.
Right? Yeah. And so, and I can't. It's hard to put yourself into that.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. Yeah.
It's absolutely impossible. I always, in fact, when I first got hurt, the girl I was dating at the time, she didn't handle it very well, and she was like, I understand, and I'm like, you do not understand. Mm-hmm. Stop say, I wish I could understand, or something, but you absolutely have no idea what I'm going through. And it was, oh man, that used to drive me nuts. Like, stop telling me you understand, because you can't. Yeah. You cannot possibly. Yeah. Anyway, so that's kind of human nature. Like, that happens a lot. Like, I'll pull up somewhere and be getting out of my truck and pulling the chair out, and people will come over and be like, hey man, can I help you? And I'm like, yeah, dude, I was just hoping some random person would be here in the parking lot to help me so I don't sit in the truck all day. No, I'm good.
I'm good. I got it.
Good.
Yeah. Well, and so here's for me what the coolest part was. So it went from my nervousness and then you reassuring in everybody, and me included, that things are going to be okay. And what I remember all these little moments and following along with your journey, but one of the ones I'll never forget is seeing you 60 feet up in the air at Alyeska on your snowmobile in a freaking chair strapped to a snowmobile going bigger than 99% of the people out there. And I'm like, okay, he's all right.
Yeah, so I was like, I felt pretty confident early that I'm like, okay, I can figure out how to do this, but if I'm gonna, I want to do it at a pretty high level.
Really?
And I mean, am I going to be able to do it the same? Probably not, but we can, anyway. So I got out a couple times in the backcountry in Alaska just with straps, and I was like, this ain't going to be it.
Yeah.
This is not it. So I was pretty fortunate, obviously to be a Polaris ambassador athlete at the time and still am. And I reached out to Visioneering, their engineering department, and I was like, hey, what do you guys think about building a snowcross seat? And they were like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, they actually built 2 seats. The first one was the Gen 1 with that was the one I jumped at Alyeska and in Valdez for the Winter Project film. But yeah, I remember they put it together. I went out to Roseau and we did some testing, got the seat to where it fit me and height and all that stuff. And it was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I still have tons of pictures of that first ride on their test track up there. And I was like, could not stop smiling for days. I was like, we're back, baby. We're back. And they had, X Games in 12 Snowcross had taken a year off.
Yep.
And then they announced in 13 that they were going to do adaptive again.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm in.
Yep.
And so that was the year I went out to, I think I was Crested Butte is where the Polaris race teams were at. And, did a bunch of laps. And I remember Bender was like, dude, what are you doing out there? Because I'm hitting all the jumps, all the doubles. Finish line was like 70 foot. I'm like greasing it all and riding. And he's like, I'm like, I'm not going to go to snowcross and not race like it's a snowcross. Like,
yeah.
Going
to get me a medal.
Power steering, that was next year. But anyway, yeah, so then, we show up at X Games and they had that big downhill double or triple.
Yeah.
It was like 100 feet to the roll.
And they wouldn't let you guys
we went out,
do it.
Well, that was after. So
okay, yep.
So we went out for practice and I rolled it the first time and came around the second time and hit it.
Shut up.
And caught the knuckle and rolled over in the corner at the bottom, rolled me over. I came around the second time, hit it again and greased it. And they are screaming on the radio, do not let him jump that jump. Do not. So I come around to hit it again, and there's like 2, X Games guys standing on Duncan was so pissed at me for hitting that jump. And I'm like, dude, what? I did it. Like, he's like, yeah, but everybody else is going to try it and die. And I was like,
well, it sounds like I'm the winner then.
Yeah, so they made us go around it for the race. Unfortunately, I broke my seat in that final, so I didn't, probably because I knuckled that big jump, but whatever. Anyway, so that kind of was, from that point forward, being able to go back to X Games, and that was a really cool thing to be like, where it kind of solidified that I was able to still do the things that I love to do, even though I had to do them a little bit differently.
I got to call those races for ESPN and to know your backstory and me doing the broadcast, it was pretty cool and special. And then, guys like Doug Henry next to you and I mean, just, it was very special, to that they did it for one. You guys got to go out there and again, just prove that we're still here and relevant.
Yeah, it was really great. And then I completed a pile of able-bodied ones, and then I think it was the next I guess it was 16. I got silver. Yeah. And really should have been gold because the next year they separated the amputees and the paras. Yeah. Mike Schultz, pretty tough to keep up with. Mike Schultz could still compete in regular.
Yeah, there's no way I'm beating Mike Schultz.
Right. But no, that was really a cool accomplishment that I had had sought for a long time, was to have an X Games medal. And yeah, man, I guess at the same time as I had decided that I was going to start the veteran stuff.
Yeah. Which brings me to the next point is, so in our life, you know, you and I have been talking about this with the veterans, even with ourselves. We're all throughout life, we're given these challenges by the big man upstairs, I do believe, of you can take the easy way or you can take the hard way. We obviously have chose the hard way in most decisions in life. But here's how I think of this for you, and how a lot of things have happened for me as well, is as you're growing up, you think that, like for me, right, all I wanted to do initially was I just want to work for players. I want to work for the factory. And then it's like, I just want to be a freestyler. I want to go win X Games. And like they keep changing, right, our agendas. And in our minds, we think that our purpose in life is to do these specific or particular things. And I have to believe that that was no different for you. I am meant to be on this earth to go set distance records, to be a rock star, to be on my snowmobile getting paid, to do all of these things. And in the end, you still get to be on your snowmobile, but I'll just go ahead and say it. Your purpose in life wasn't to go do backflips. Your purpose in life was to do exactly what you're doing right now, because it's not pretty special. It's absolutely, like, you save people's lives, Paul, and you're a very humble dude. You maybe never admit that, but I've seen it, like, literally here at my place, and you have humbled me. We used the word last night in the writers get together. You have put so much perspective in my life by what you do and bringing these guys here, that it has really made my life more satisfying because of the things you've done. So I know you would never say or admit any of those things, but talk about that transition and how it happened, and you know what this direction of life is, where it's taken you.
Well, I going back to what you're talking about as far as your purpose, I think that we're allowed to be fluid in our purpose, and it can change. And that's a good thing, because as you I guess, for lack of a better word, you mature and you age, your priorities change and your perspectives change, just like you're saying. So your purpose should change.
Yeah.
It should become, as you get older, it becomes less selfish, and it's more, you're able to give more yourself to your coworkers, your employees, your family, whatever the case may be. And that's kind of where, I think I got pushed that way when I got hurt. Because at the time when I first got hurt, Monster was in a bit of a battle with the upper echelon of the military, because they wanted to ban energy drinks on base. So because they were contributing it to the folks not being able to recover from PTSD.
Which we know that's not the
for
truth.
sure. So and they knew it too. So Monster. So you drink a pot of coffee before you go to bed, you're going to have a rough time sleeping, any better or worse than if you drink a Monster. Come on. So Monster got together with actually Rockstar as well, I believe, and they went out and they were like, hey, let's put something together to help. Like, how can we help with this instead of shit canning this on base? It seems like a bad plan. We'd rather figure out what's really going on. So they just did research and found that our action sports athletes had more in common with combat vets coming back, as far as I think, I don't know this, I'm not a scientist or a psychiatrist, but I'm sure that it has something to do with the adrenaline.
100%.
Like, the first time you did a backflip, you were like, you peed a little and you were like, oh my God, and you were high as a kite.
I want some more.
And then, the first time somebody gets shot in combat, I imagine they probably freak out a little, and then by the 200th time, it's not as cool.
That they're getting shot
or
at.
not as, you don't get the same rise out of it. So that adrenaline addiction, I almost want to call it, is probably real similar. So they tasked several of their athletes that had been through traumatic experiences just to share their stories. So they flew a film crew up to Alaska, and we sat down, and basically I just recited my story, similarly to what we're doing here, just more about the recovery process and what worked and what didn't, and yeah, it kind of about halfway through that, I was, it kind of dawned on me like this is a group of people that I think kind of get left behind when they come home.
Mhm.
So I'm like, I have a real opportunity to maybe have common ground on some of our veterans that, the psychiatrist prescribing drugs across the table will never. And that's kind of when the idea popped in my head. I'm like, I just want to get these guys together, get like experiences, and get them out in the backcountry. And that was kind of the start of it all. Was right in that. I took a couple hours to do the interview, and I was thinking the whole time, I'm like, I think I could do this. Like, I can I can ride.
Mm-hmm.
B, I can share the things that I'm passionate about, and what a better way to give back to an industry that has given me so much. Yeah. So, yeah, not too long after that, I put the foundation together, and yeah, it was kind of. I mean, I never really expected it, or I guess that's not really the right word. I just didn't know what it could become. It was just an idea.
How could you?
And it's become a pretty special thing. Like there's a lot of amazing people that I still talk to on a regular. I mean, these people become my family. Like, and just definitely the most amazing group of humans that you ever get to interact with.
Yeah,
it's just the selflessness and it's just amazing that, and I still don't think they get treated as well as they should, and if I can, one of the coolest things about the foundation that I've started is it's spawned a whole bunch of other ones.
Yeah.
And that's really great. And people, I
Yeah.
usually get a call and they're like, "Hey man, we're thinking about doing this. Are you okay with it?" I'm like, "Bro, what are you talking about? You don't have to call and ask. I appreciate that. I don't have the monopoly on, veteran foundations. Like, do it. I think that's great."
Yeah.
Like you're not there. We're never going to be able to help enough
all
of
them.
Yeah.
Enough of them. Yeah.
So that's been a pretty, I'm pretty proud of that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So you've been doing it. We talked about that. You've been doing this basically since 2012, 13. You've incorporated our program here with that. We get a new group of dudes in every year. What I love to see is, we've gotten several guys multiple years, and I can just there's been some insanely special moments, but I think of guys like Willie Sr., Willie Jr., Pat, Blaze. Like I mean, all of these guys that to see how they were when they came here for the very first time, and to see what they are different people. They are
completely.
Completely.
It's wild. So that was like in the beginning. I'm like, how am I gonna, pick guys to come?
Yeah.
Like, do I have a sign-up sheet, or do they write an essay? Like what? Anyway, I at the time I knew enough veterans to where I was like, hey, do you think you know anyone or would like to do this? And that is how every single one has happened. Mm-hmm. You have to either know someone or be recommended by someone. And if you come on one and want to come again, you have to bring someone new. And you don't get to come, every year. You get to come twice. Mm-hmm. And then maybe down the road, again, we revisit. Guys come after, 4 or 5 years not being here, and they call me up and they're like, hey, man, I got a guy that really needs this. So, yeah, there's no sign-up sheet. There's no, write me an essay, tell me why you deserve to come. It's and that's a twofold. Like, I don't have a way to vet these people. Like, I don't have the time or the resources.
Sure.
So if I have guys bringing guys, and ladies for that matter, mm-hmm. They're doing the vetting process for me. Nobody's going to want to bring somebody that they, is going to embarrass them or embarrass the group.
Yeah.
So it has worked out really, really well. It's every single person that's come through this ride has known someone that's done it.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Well, and I can't specifically share some of the true stories that we've gotten from, like, that one last night was about his.
Actually, I got one last night after that the gentleman pulled me aside and said, you saved my life this weekend. It's wild.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you like, what do you do with that? I mean, that's the goal, right? Like, too many veterans take that route or that road.
Yeah.
And if we can, keep them from doing it, that's the goal. But man,
Yeah.
it's a wild thing.
Yeah. It's as heavy as it gets.
Yeah.
And, it's on our end too, right? It's like, so you're telling me just going out and doing what I love is going to save this person's life. And, without you putting this all together, I mean, like I was telling the guys last night, it's like, you guys think that this was just another day on the mountain. This was so far from that. This changes people's lives, and that's pretty incredible and kudos to you, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible thing. It's very, I mean, humbling doesn't really even cover it. Like, well, I mean, I think part of it too is like, not only are we showcasing the things that we're passionate about and getting folks out on the mountain, it's just showing guys that have kind of been left behind that somebody still gives a shit.
Yeah. Paul, I think, the other thing that's really crazy to me is out of all the people we've done through here, and let's just use our group that we've been riding with for the past 2 days, you get in a room with these guys and you shake hands and they're smiling and everything. You would never know that was their perspective of like, you know what, today I could just end my life and it wouldn't really be that big of a deal to me.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, you think about it this way. Like, if you take yourself, for instance, you're a proud guy and you got it all figured out. You know what I mean? Like, but even though we know we don't, but you kind of have that mindset. And if you can do something and not have to ask anybody for help, you're damn sure going to give it your best shot. I'm sure that has to be the same. Like, I'm okay. And all of a sudden, one day in one moment, you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm pretty fortunate. I've never, been at that point, and hope to God that I never am.
Yeah.
I don't think I will be, but I can imagine it's probably a really difficult situation to be in, to be that vulnerable and ask and not put on that smiling face like everything's okay. That has to be a tough thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've helped hundreds, thousands of people. And like you said, it's pretty damn awesome that we have other foundations now being, looking at your model and saying, I think I can help and do this. And so I think that's great. I'll put it in this is kind of a stretch from a similarity, but, it's no different than, Caleb and Sand and all these other guys, doing backcountry tours. And all I ask, I'm like, I don't look at them as competition. All I ask is like, do a good job, right? Do a good job for all the work that we've put into this, and just don't put a bad taste in people's mouth of guided tours or veteran rides or anything like that. Just work hard, do a good job, and it seems like that's kind of happening.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I think it's great. I mean, Ken Moose, one of the guys that was on this ride, he's got a foundation he started in Alaska. Like,
yeah,
it's great. And even, to take that one step further, like, all of the volunteers that come back and help now, they're all veterans. They've all been through the program.
Yeah. And
it's really, so there's twofold to that. Like, obviously I want to keep them involved, but I'm not going to be able to do this forever.
Sure.
But the program needs to stay, whether I'm
100%.
doing it or not, or if I step back a little and just go to some of the rides. I need somebody that I trust that can keep it going, and I'm definitely building that group, that's awesome.
Well, so you're 12, 13 years in on this. You've got a beautiful wife at home, beautiful son at home, and you're spending 2-3 weeks down here, 4 weeks, whatever it is, and then before you get home, like when we talk about longevity, and what's the plan, man? Where are you taking this thing from here?
Yeah, I mean, I the being away is tough for sure. but as Jack, my son, gets a little older, it's a little easier on my wife. So he's getting to be pretty self-sufficient, and we're talking about maybe firing up a second one, so we'll see how that goes. But my wife's amazing. She's like, it sucks that you're gone, but why you're gone is awesome. So yeah, and her dad's a vet, my dad's a vet. Like she gets it. She's yeah. So it's just, I don't have a finite number as far as how many more years. I'm still, in fairly decent shape and still climb on a sled and rip about. So it'll be a bit, but each time we do these and I'm, that end kind of when I'll step away a little bit and even potentially like we're looking at, I turn down funding quite often because I have a really nice program. If I have more dollars, I have to do more events. And right now I'm at like the cap. I went from, doing one event a year to now we do like 25.
Wow.
So, we're doing fishing trips. We're doing, I get the guys out to the RC track and we donate cars and we do obviously snowmobiling and side-by-sides and all the things that I love to do, we get vets involved in. So it's pretty busy.
Yeah.
So I don't really have, and I have it all pretty budgeted. I've got a little wiggle room, but the money I take in, we spend.
Yeah.
And, until I am in a place where I have a team put together that can do more events, and eventually it would be cool. Like, there's no reason we can't do these in, Texas and Virginia, and like, why don't we have like, regional warrior ride teams? Like that we could do that, but we got to have the right team in place to make that happen. And so that's kind of like, I would like to see it grow, but I don't ever want it to lose its, organic nature. Like I get a lot of guys that come to these and they don't know what to expect. A lot of times they don't even think I'm telling them the truth when I'm like, this is what we're doing. They're like, yeah, you're going to put me in a room, we're going to hold hands and we're going to sing Kumbaya. And I'm like, brother, it's nothing like that. The only structure we have is what we're doing as far as activities. Like, we're going to get up, we're going to have breakfast, we're going to hang out, we're going to go rip, and in the evenings we're going to have dinner. That's and the organic part happens when these guys are sitting at the dinner table. It's just it doesn't matter from where these guys are from, what, whether it's Vietnam or Afghanistan or they're currently, in the military, active duty. To watch these guys sit down and become family in like 26 seconds is insane.
Yeah.
Like you would never ever see that in any other aspect of life as far as human interaction goes. Like, these guys are brothers before and sisters before they even know it.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So I definitely would like to grow that. And I think we will. It's just, the pieces have to be put in the right places before we can.
Well, I can't tell you thank you enough for sitting in here and doing this. I know for your program, just like my program, it takes a tremendous amount of time, effort, money. I'd love to give you the opportunity to just, thank those people that help make this a reality.
Yeah, absolutely. So the cool thing about this, I have a pretty rad list of sled sponsors that fund the entire vet program for all practical purposes. It's amazing. So, Straight Line Performance contributes. Fly Racing is a big one. Polaris obviously is a huge one. They've been awesome and have been awesome for a long time.
Yeah.
Monster Energy is by far and away the biggest supporter. They write the biggest check, and they're amazing. Like, it's a pretty easy relationship that I have built with them. On the philanthropy side as well as the athlete/ambassador side. It's been since 2005, man. It's long relationship. Wow. 20 years.
Wow.
20 years this year I've been a Monster athlete. So, I can't thank those guys enough. And then obviously all the volunteers that come and help with the program. Granted, I don't know how much I have to thank them because they get to go ride in the backcountry. So it's kind of but there's a lot more that goes into it. Pat's he's awesome.
Yeah.
He's really, man, I tell you what, every year it's like he's a different person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just improving, and just himself as a person, his relationship with his wife and their business, and just it's really great. And there's a lot of those guys out there that have helped out, and you can't do it. I couldn't do it on my own. So you know the drill. You cannot do it by myself. Nope. So there's a lot of people that have really helped out, and I can't thank them enough.
Well, Paul, our paths have paralleled for a very long time. I'm so thankful that they continue to parallel. I love being a part of this program. And, you know, again, for us to hear stories like we did last night is, I mean, literally just look.
It's awesome, man.
I mean, you see that? It's you think like putting a line together in the backcountry or a backflip is rewarding, and again, it pales in comparison to what you know, just and we're doing this much, right, compared to what needs to be done. So just very thankful for everything you do, man, and can't wait till next year.
Sounds good. I appreciate it, man.
Cool,
I always love coming out, bud.
Thanks for coming on. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed both part one and part two of a little catch up with a true legend of the sport and a hero to me, Paul Thacker.